readers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire Books, and I just want to do a little October roundup. It's actually October 25th when I'm filming this, so there are a couple more days to read. I'll probably sneak in a couple of books before the end of the month, but I feel like this is a good moment to just round up what I read. I had fall break this month, which means that I had a long weekend, and I got a lot of reading in. But I think what I'm going to do is just talk about a few of the very best things that I read and why I liked them. I did read a few things that I didn't like, but I also don't think that I disliked them in a way that was substantial enough to warrant a whole lot of commentary. So I'm just going to drop it for this month. So while I was vacationing, I read a few things I thought were okay. I read My Sister the Serial Killer, which I was super into until the ending, which I didn't think really stuck. I read We Hunt the Flame, which I was super excited about because I'm all about the Middle Eastern inspired setting, but it was okay. It was just a standard YA book. I won't remember it in like another month. I read Cinder, finally, which I have managed to avoid for years. That one was also just okay. I enjoyed the story, but it's set in New Beijing and nothing about it felt... I mean, if you told me it was set in New York, I would have believed you. I would have liked a little bit more flavor other than just character names. And I read The Shadows, which I thought was going to terrify me, but actually it was really more of a meditation on having a messed up experience in a small town. I didn't think it was that scary. You have a guy who's gone home to visit his mother who's in hospice dying, and he also has to confront a murder that happened amongst his friends when he was a child. And there are aspects of the story that are messed up, but it just really wasn't that scary. It was entertaining. I don't regret reading it, but I'm not going to be putting it on a must-read list either. I read a couple of very cute romances this month. One of them was called Waiting in the Wings, and this is just the cutest, fluffiest romance. It is about this leading lady at a theater named Erin who has never been kissed except on stage. And so she decides to take a break from the next play so she can go get a real kiss and have true romance. And then she ends up having to choose between a gallant, sexy leading man and her, beloved childhood best friend who has also come to work at the theater troupe. It's so cute. It's also Philippine literature. So you get, a lot of phrases that aren't in English that I had to look up on Google, and just a lot of really interesting cultural flavors. That's just a little bit different from what you find in a typical white people romance. I was very charmed by it. I would 100% watch the film version of this book because it was just so cute. And I think what I like the best about it is that other than one drunk guy who gets handsy and then disappears from the story, everybody in the entire book is somebody that you can like and respect. So even your two, rival romance men end up being these really good people that you have a lot of respect for and that you wish the best for. And I really like a book like that. Super charming. Definitely give it a look if you want a quick, fluffy, romantic read. The other romance I read this month is by Courtney Milan because she's great. So I read The Duke Who Didn't. It's the first in a Wedgeford Trials series, and it's about this half-Chinese duke who falls in love with this girl in a town that he's been going to that he technically owns, but he hasn't actually come clean with the people in the town about that. So he goes there to be a normal person, but he's fallen in love with one of these townspeople, and she's great, and he's worried that she's going to reject him when she finds out who he really is. The plot line is a little slow. I mean, you already know that you're going to get your happily ever after. There's not necessarily a whole lot of tension in the book, but it was super cute, and I just really got a warm, fuzzy feeling from it. I would 100% return to Wedgeford and read another Wedgeford Trials book, and I generally think that Courtney Milan can do no wrong. I really enjoy her work, so anything from her, I'm going to give it a shot, and you should too if you like romance. So now let's get into the really good stuff that I read this month. I had two books that I gave 4 stars to. One was Magic Lessons, which is another prequel to Practical Magic, but this one is actually set all the way back, in Salem in olden times. And it was really charming. It was just such a nice story. I liked watching the main character grow, and I liked her interactions with and love for her daughter. And I liked the way that magic was done in this book, both in terms of how it fit into society, even though the society technically rejects magic, and in terms of good and bad magic and how those things manifest. It was just a really enjoyable read. I was super into it, and I would definitely recommend that book to anybody who wants to read something witchy and with a good fall vibe. The other 4-star book for me that I read this month is My Dark Vanessa. This is a really messed up book. Trigger warning right now. It's about an abusive relationship between an adult male teacher and his 15-year-old student. So My Dark Vanessa is told from the point of view of the girl, who is now an adult, and she is both caught up in the Me Too movement because things that this teacher has done with other students is coming to light and she's being asked to come forward. And she's also coping with herself and her own trauma because she doesn't want to see herself as a victim or as someone who was abused. And she is trying to tell and retell this story to herself in a way that she can handle. And just watching her go through that is agonizing, but I also think it's a really good depiction of what that would be like. And, you know, and sometimes she behaves in ways that are really infuriating and frustrating, especially to her mother or to people that she tries to date. You know, she hides things from her therapist instead of getting help. And all of these behaviors can frustrate you as the reader, but I also think it's really important to watch her do them because those behaviors make sense to her as somebody who is surviving trauma. I'm also really happy to see a book about the abuse of a student by a teacher that doesn't romanticize anything in any way. The teacher comes off disgusting, as he absolutely should. And not only does he come off disgusting in her memories of the moment, but because they are still in touch at the beginning of the book, you can actually see him still trying to manipulate her and rewrite history and rewrite their story in the ways that an abuser does. And so if you can stomach it, I think the book is a really good work that helps you think about these things in a way that is compelling and believable. If you don't want to read a book on this topic, don't read it. Just don't. Because it's really gross. Good, but gross. And then let's move into my 5-star reads of this month. There were 3 of them. One I technically read on September 30th, but I just loved it, so we're going to talk about it anyway. All right, so my first official October 5-star read was The Spy Who Came In From the Cold by John le Carré. I've been going on a George Smiley kick. I read The Spy Who Came In From the Cold a few years ago, and this is a reread, and I just really appreciate it. What a fast-paced, nice thriller with all the right adventure and skullduggery, but also a lot of questions asked about who are we helping? What does it serve? Who do I serve? Is what I'm doing worth it? There are all the deep questions kind of implied in there, but it's really just a good spy thriller. Probably the best I've ever read. So if you want to read a good spy book, I really think The Spy Who Came In For the Cold is a great one. But I would say that is my lesser 5-star review of the month. I read 2 absolutely great books this month. They were so good. The first one is the one that I technically finished on September 30th, but I do not care. And that is Brit Bennett's The Vanishing Half. The Vanishing Half is absolutely fabulous. It is the kind of book that I hope that people are reading in English classes and soon at the high school level and at the college level because it's just such a great piece of literature. The writing is beautiful. I instantly just got sucked in to this town called Mallard in Louisiana, where basically the premise of the book is that there are these twins who are born in a town that is entirely composed of very, very light-skinned Black people. It's called Mallard. It's in Louisiana. And it leads to this really weird situation where it's a bunch of people who aren't white, but they're very proud of their light-skinnedness. And some of them could even pass as white people. So one sister decides to marry a man who has very dark skin, and she has a dark-skinned child named Jude, who is honestly the most badass character in the book. I love her. The other twin decides to pass as white. She marries a white man, and she then just cuts off contact with her family and just disappears. So she's the half that vanishes. But because they are these twins who have this incredible bond, that breaking of the bond damages both of them for their entire lives. And there are these intense repercussions that play out both in their lives and in their daughters' lives. So each of them has a daughter, and those daughters eventually meet. And so the conflict of identity and who am I, where did I come from, who is my family, all of those explorations come up throughout the book. And It's just really, really well done. There is also a transgender character who is absolutely fabulous. He can absolutely be my book boyfriend, but you get some insights into his struggles as well with his own identity. So the book is all these different manifestations of identity and what do you hide and what do you show and what do you tell people about who you really are. And, in the case of Reese, who is trans, what does he need to disclose about his past life? He has left his past life behind to enter the life he's truly meant to live. Whereas Stella, the twin who passes as white, is damaged by her choice to leave her origins, and no one really knows her in the future life she lives as an adult. And so the book is very much about race and about colorism, but it's also very much about identity and family and who do you let in and trust? What does it mean if you marry someone you don't trust? And it's just got so much to think about that I will definitely be reading that one again. And even though all the issues in the book are very heavy, really you can just read it and enjoy the ride because you really care what's going to happen to everybody in that book. I just had to know, oh my goodness, how are the daughters going to meet? Oh man, are the twins ever going to see each other again? What's going to happen? And I was just agonized until I could finish the entire book. So the writing is great. The characterization is great. The things the book makes you think about are great. I think that you should absolutely read The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. It's so good. The other absolutely great book I read this month, gave it 5 stars. I didn't actually expect to like it this much, but I loved it. It is Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. So Gyasi is an immigrant from Ghana, and she writes this book about a girl who has immigrated with her family. She's the second child, and, her father ends up being absent from the picture. Her mother really struggles in the United States, and her brother breaks everyone in the family's heart because he becomes addicted to painkillers after a sports injury and eventually overdoses as a result of that addiction. So the main character has gone through just this really traumatic childhood and background. But in the book, she's an adult, and her mother is having another depressive phase like the one she had when her son died. So the daughter is in the middle of getting her doctorate at Stanford, and she studies mice. More specifically, she's a neuroscientist, and she's studying addiction in mice. So the tension of the book is partially between mother and daughter and how do you process trauma. The other is actually between the main character's childhood religion and her pursuit of science to give her answers. So as a child, she was brought up in a super fundamentalist church, and, she was memorizing Bible verses and sort of taking the Bible as literally true and really, being brought up in that particular version of Christianity. Her mother still practices it, but she is questioning her religion and she's questioning God, and she's doing it through science. So she is doing all these experiments on mice, and she is trying to answer these questions for herself about why did my brother turn out the way he did? How did we lose him? What could be done to save people like him? And so the pain of her childhood is something that she's processing as an adult. But she has a lot of issues with bottling up her feelings and trying to bond with other people, trying to bond with her mother after all of these years and all of these changes between them. And so the book turns into this just really intense, sad, but also really satisfying meditation on families and losing family members and feeling like you can't connect to family members or to other people, confronting what you were taught in your childhood, trying to figure out your relationship with your religion, which, a lot of things that main character talks about in her church experiences really reflect things that I have seen and experienced as somebody who grew up in the American South and who eventually rejected my childhood religion. So I really felt a lot of what was going on in Transcendent Kingdom, both on a personal level and just as somebody who appreciates really good literature. It was just such a tremendous and intense read. I really recommend that if you're in the right mindset for something like that you give Transcendent Kingdom a try. So those are my October reads. I read a couple other things, but I brought up the ones that I felt like bringing up. And I highly recommend that you give them a look. Happy reading.